Welcome back to the Sachsenring. Welcome back to the FIM Sidecar World Championship. This is the second round of the season. We have already, of course, had our first round of the season at Le Mans on the support bill of the 24 Hours Moto event. That was a very exciting beginning to the season for sure. And we come in to this weekend with new championship leaders. Interestingly, on his return to the series, Markus Schlosser, the 2021 champion, had a brilliant weekend at Le Mans. I don't think he was intending to do the full World Championship season, but he's here and ready to go and fully committed now, I think, for a championship tilt. But on pole position today, Sam and Tom Christie. The Christies on the Hannafin LCR Yamaha on pole position for this one, joined by the slightly altered livery from Steinhausen Racing, Harry Payne and Kevin Rousseau. So a very, very strong front row of the grid. Two teams we're familiar with from last season. Then it is Schlosser and Schmidt there on the second row of the grid. Third on the grid on the number 3 machine. That's a very strong little pairing, that, incidentally. Markus Schlosser being joined by young Luca Schmidt. You see there the number 3 bike on the second row. So good to welcome Markus Schlosser back. Of course, one factor that's new, one factor that's throwing up a lot of variables this year is the fact that we're no longer on Avon tyres. We've moved over to Hoosier tyres, and that has meant that it's a learning curve for everybody, and perhaps that learning curve a little more difficult at the apex for Todd Ellis and Emmanuel Clement. They are not at the front of the order. The Christies and Payne and Rousseau will be on the front row, then 2x2, of course, in sidecar. Schlosser and Schmidt alongside Stroyer and Kolsch on row 2, Gottlieb and Craig, Pavarinta and Christie on row 3. Now that's interesting as well, isn't it? Pekka Pavarinta this time joined by the other of the Christies, Adam Christie, on the 44. That's your first 3 rows. We have to go beyond the first 3 rows of the grid to find Todd Ellis and Emmanuel Clement. They are starting this race from 8th position alongside the Peugeots. Of course, the IDM champions, the German champions from last year, as well as the French champions. They are on row 4. Weissen and Salmon on row 5 alongside Werkstetter and Pirat. Leglis and Sescuti on row 6 alongside the 12th place starters Archer and Janssens. The Laidlows are 13th. Then it's Cable and Richardson on the 111 machine. Venus and Sedlacek, Lugan and Ruby rounding out the 16 starting field for this one. Now, in theory, looking at last year's points table, you'd think that perhaps this is Ellis and Clement's 3rd consecutive title. Fairly obviously in 2024. Of course, they're the defending champions. They won it in 22. They won it in 23. The Birchells are not here. One of the Birchells has, of course, decided to retire. And then, of course, you've got Kershaw and Charlwood, who sadly aren't here either. They were at the Goodwood Sprint, the wonderful sidecar shootout event that took place for sidecar machines to a global audience. But they lost their sponsor, unfortunately, and they are not on the entry list for this weekend. So the 2nd and 3rd place finishers in last year's championship are not here. However, the Christies, Payne and Rousseau, and the returning Markus Schlosser all look incredibly strong in 2024. So Ellis and Clement from the 4th row of the grid are going to have a lot of work to do. You see the lights on your screen. We're about to go racing for the first time in Germany this year. We move across from France to Germany, and moving across to the front of the grid is Harry Payne and Kevin Rousseau. That's a very good start from the 45 outfit. Payne with a brilliant start. Harrison Payne, Harry Payne at the front of the field. Kevin Rousseau there just behind him, obviously, jostling through the first few corners. A physical first few turns for the passengers. Up the hill, lots, of course, of left-hand corners around this circuit. Just 3 corners to the right on this track, and one of them is the almost flat-out flick through the waterfall, so not much to do on the right side of the bike for the passengers this weekend. They've just got to hold on and try and distribute their weight as far left as possible for most of the lap. There is the 6 bike still falling through. I thought that Ellis and Clement might make up some positions, but actually I think counterintuitively they've lost a place there on the first lap of the race. So Ellis and Clement in the distinctive red and green machine, not really making the progress we'd expect from them. The LCR Yamaha of Ellis and Clement still not anywhere near the top half dozen. It will be Payne and Rousseau for Steinhausen Racing then, who cross the line to lead the first lap of the race. This is an 11-lap sprint in the Superside FIM Sidecar World Championship, so just the 11 laps of racing. An early lead, therefore, is critical. You can never win a race at the first corner, but if you lead into the first corner with just 11 laps of racing to do, that's certainly advantageous. The Christies, Schlosser and Schmidt in 2nd and 3rd place. Then it's Gottlieb and Craig in 4th position. Stroyer and Kulsch have dropped down to 5th position on their Team Stroyer racing machine. Pavarinta and Christie in 6th place, and Ellis and Clement holding station. They remain in 8th place. Further down the order, that is a big surprise. So Markus Schlosser and Lukas Schmidt lead the championship coming into this weekend on 45 points. Ellis and Clement came in on 36. Sam and Tom Christie were 3rd in the championship on 29 points. A victory and a DNF is the story of the year so far for Payne and Rousseau. So Harry Payne and Kevin Rousseau already have their first win of the season. They've also had their first DNF of the season. They'll be looking to get 2 strong. 2 strong results. Cross the line to begin lap number 3 of the race. Payne and Rousseau and the Christies 1-2 at the moment. To the inside line there goes, that was Stroyer and Kulsch, wasn't it? Going to the inside. Yes, it was. Moving up to 4th position. A good, very good start for them. Looking down over the long right-hander at the bottom of the hill. This Sachsenring circuit isn't really a circuit that gets flattened by TV cameras. It's quite evident looking at these pictures just how undulating it is, and yet, if you ever try and walk the thing in real life, it's pretty intense just how big some of the elevation change is. Of course, the famous waterfall. There was some talk that we might have rain today. I was wondering whether it would become a literal waterfall, but it seems like the weather is staying with us this weekend. There's the 45, there's the Steinhausen racing machine. For now, they lead. It was 0.6 of a second last time across the line. I don't think it's gone out or gone up really either way since then. Indeed, they cross the line now, and what is the gap between them? It's still at 0.6 of a second, so Sam and Tom are trying to follow Payne and Rousseau, but not yet finding a way through. Of course, Payne and Rousseau, I think a lot of the Isle of Man will be watching and hoping that they can come back yielding trophies once again after this weekend. Schlosser and Schmidt still there in 3rd place as well. Stroyer and Kulsch did get through into 4th position, as we saw at turn 1 on the previous lap. Still no movement, though, from Ellis and Clement. That's really surprising. Also quite surprising is that the Peugeots aren't moving through the order either. They were very strong last year. Always a factor in the top 10, and Ted and Vincent Peugeot are currently down in 10th place, so they have lost a few positions from their 7th place starting grid. Their best result last year here at the Sachsenring was a 5th place finish. Stroy and Kolsch are right on the back there as well of Schlosser and Schmidt. So that battle for third place is looking quite tasty indeed. And that 21 looks hooked up today. Team Stroyer Racing have sussed out this new tyre, seemingly. They've sussed out their setup for the Saxon Ring. And they square up the exit of the corner quite nicely as well. They'll be in the slip, of course, on the long run towards turn 1, but I don't think they're close enough for a dive into the corner. Of course, that's a sentence that I uttered several times last year, only for Todd Ellis to prove me completely wrong with his late-breaking exploits. But word in the paddock is that Ellis and Clement just don't quite have the setup underneath them. The bike feels uneasy, unsettled underneath them, whether they haven't quite sussed out the Hoosier tyres and how to set them up for this specific circuit, along with the setup in conjunction with the tyre. That could be the explanation. Certainly they look strong at Le Mans, but this is not the kind of performance we'd expect from our two-time champions. Stroyer and Kolsch looking to the inside briefly. That would be a bold overtaking opportunity there. They are going to go for it, though. I don't think it's going to be too many more corners. Schlosser will be all too aware that someone's coming up behind them. Of course, Schlosser, a wily veteran at this point, over 50 years of age. World champion back in 2021. He was the first Swiss World Sidecar champion since 1994. Stroyer and Kolsch, though, just waiting in the wings right now. Stroyer started racing sidecars back in 2007. Himself a 2015 world title holder. Of course, Egbert Stroyer, his father, a three-time world champion in the 1980s in sidecar competition. Kevin Kolsch has been working with Benny Stroyer now since 2022. They certainly looked like they were coming on song towards the tail end of last season, and that momentum seems to be continuing on through 2024. Payne and Rousseau are maybe being closed in a little bit now by the Christies. I think that gap is down under 6/10 for the first time in a while. It was halved. It was 0.362 of a second last time across the line. Steinhausen versus Hannafin then at the front of the order. Then it's two eponymous teams. Markus Schlosser on the Team Schlosser LCR Yamaha. Stroyer and Kolsch on the ARS chassis. It's a Team Stroyer Racing entry. Look at this, the Christies looking to the inside, but did they do so at the expense of their run out of the final corner? Because turn 1, of course, is perhaps the most natural overtaking opportunity on the lap as we cross the line to begin lap 7. Let's see, 0.2 of a second between them. No, the Christies are in good position here. They look to the inside, they try and make the dive, but no, Harry Payne sweeps across the front of the LCR. It's ARS versus LCR at the front. It's LCR versus ARS in 3rd and 4th position as well. So a good mix of the two chassis builders. I think everyone this year, everyone this weekend at least, running Yamaha motors. Yes, indeed. So last year, one of the only real outliers from the Yamaha 600cc unit, based on what, of course, you'd get in the R6 Superbike or Super Sport bike. The only real outlier to that on a consistent basis was the Honda motor in the Birchall Brothers machine, but that's not here this season, at least not this weekend. We hope to see the Birchalls again before too long, or at least the remaining Birchall, of course, since Tom has hung up the leathers. I'm sure they will be making a bid, though, on the shorter chassis, the F2 chassis, for the TT once again. And even though he's not on the passenger seat anymore, you can be sure that Tom Birchall will always have his finger in the pie at that hugely successful team. Lap 8 of the race, Payne and Christie. Well clear, of course, of the battle for third place, which means that Sam and Tom can just focus on trying to get themselves through here. Payne and Rousseau, if there were mirrors, they'd certainly be getting more engaged with them at this juncture, because they'll hear the Hanifin bike behind them. They'll hear the Christie's almost breathing down their neck at this stage. Of course, the passenger will be looking over his shoulder. Kevin Rousseau will be looking over his shoulder occasionally and going, okay, they're still there. And sure enough, still at last time by, 0.36 of a second back. So it's close, close and closer still. Down the hill, once again they go. Just waiting to see whether the Christies get the run. Out of the final corner, not a bad run by any means. Let's see. Closing in, 0.33 of a second. I don't think they'll be close enough unless it's a particularly spectacular lunge into the first corner. So moving and shaking further back there. That was Vyson and Salmon trying to find their way through for 6th position on the Gust Oil Sidecar Racing Team LCR. They may well have lost out to, or they might well have gained a position from Gottlieb and Craig there, who've lost out to Pavarinti and Adam Christie on the previous lap. So Pavarinti and Adam Christie up to 5th position on the Harney Racing ARS Yamaha. Still no change. Only 2.5 laps left to go then for Harry Payne and Kevin Rousseau to withstand the pressure here at the Sachsenring in the Superside Super Sprint. 11 laps of racing. These races always fly by. Of course, they've got the longer race to contend with on Sunday. A little more tyre preservation, perhaps energy preservation as well, a factor in that one. This time, I think the Christies might have a good shot into the first corner. They were very close to the rear of Kevin Rousseau as they came it through the final corner. Look at the gap. It's down under 0.2 of a second for the first time at the line. And sure enough, the Christies lunge to the inside. Is the move made, though? We don't see it. Who's going to come out in the lead? We're going to have to wait with bated breath to see who's leading. Is it Payne and Rousseau? Is it the Christies? We still don't see. We need to get a look at those race leaders. It's changed. It has changed. Sam and Tom Christie did get to the inside. It looked very much like they would be to the inside line. What an effort from Sam and Tom Christie. It looked for the world like they were going to make it, and sure enough they did. Sam and Tom Christie then, your leaders. As we go on to the final lap with Payne and Rousseau right there with them. They come across the line now to begin at the final lap of the race. You can see the cheering, the frantic waggling of the limbs, saying, come on, go for it, go for it. Both teams will be saying, push to the max now. Final lap of the race. Can Payne and Rousseau find a way by? They weren't close enough at turn 1. Turn 1 is the critical overtaking point on this lap. It always is. However, certainly on a sidecar, you can make moves elsewhere. Keep an eye on the right-hander, the left-hander immediately following the Waterhall. waterfall. Because that will be an ideal overtaking opportunity, potentially. But let's see if it works out this time. We need a good run over the crest of the hill and down the slope. Past the rear end of the paddock will go our leading battle, and sure enough, Payne and Rousseau are right there with the Christies. Who's going to win this one? It is going to come down to the last two corners of the race. Will it be the Christies? Will it be Payne and Rousseau? Payne and Rousseau to the inside line. Have they reclaimed the lead? Yes, they have. But is it a lasting lead? That's the next question. Here comes Sam and Tom Christie. They're not close enough. Going into the final corner, they're going to try and get a good run up the hill. But will it be in vain? It's going to be a drag race to the line. The Christies are close, but Payne and Rousseau will be the ones to cross the line first. They are the winners of the first race in round 2 of the season. Classic sidecar racing. Payne and Rousseau make it work 2 corners from home after leading for much of the race. Briefly looked like it might slip away from them in the Superside sprint there after the Christies got through. Obviously, there was no contact or drama between them. You saw there that the Christies and Payne and Rousseau gave each other kind of nice, cordial waves. We didn't see the move from the Christies, but one can infer that it was a clean one. Well, the Superside Super Sprint never fails to deliver. Payne and Rousseau are your winners then. The Christies and the new team of Schlosser and Schmidt will be our top 3 on the podium. Marshals keen to make their way out. You saw there some of the high fives a few corners ago being doled out to the Marshals in orange, with whom we could not go racing. We thank them for their efforts. Busy weekend, of course. This is the first time this season that the FIM Sidecar World Championship is on the IDM Superbike weekend. Of course, that goes well beyond the Superbikes themselves. Northern Talent Cup and numerous German categories alongside the FIM World Sidecar Championship. And looks like Markus Schlosser is very popular. He's been stopped by some of the marshals who want to say hello. And they've even got a number 3 sign there out for him. Interesting. So then, Payne and Rousseau with the victory. Fastest lap, though, going to the Christies, a 1:28.691. Schlosser and Schmidt third in the race, ahead of Stroyer and Kolsch, who couldn't quite find a way past. Pavarinter and Christie in 5th. Weissen and Salmon eventually getting up to 6th place on the 41. A good effort from the Gust Oil sidecar team. Gottlieb and Craig in 7th. Todd Ellis and Emmanuel Clement 2nd in the championship coming into this weekend. Defending champs. They only make it 8th position. The Peugeots in 9th. The Laidlows rounding out your top 10. Leglis, Zescuti, Archer and Janssens rounding you down to 12th place. Werkstetter and Pirat in 13th place on their Bonovo Action Sattler Motorsport entry. Cable and Richardson 14th. Venus and Sedlacek 15th. Illusion and Ruby round out the 16th finishing order. So then, this is some highlights of the race that was. Of course, at the start from the outside of the front, well, the inside of the front row, but the second position, Payne and Rousseau got a lightning start to lead in the early stages. The Steinhausen duo on the 45 and the Christies on the Team Hannafin machine would disappear up the road during this race. Would be Payne and Rousseau, who had to fight back, lunge to the inside. They lost out on the lead on lap 9. This was lap 11, the very final corners of the race, and the 45 got through. great battle between these two teams who are planting themselves as favourites in the championship. A second win of the season, of course, for Payne and Russo. They've won every race they've finished so far in the 2024 FIM Sidecar World Championship. And if they can keep that stat going and keep finishing races, then who's going to be able to beat them? They won't be leading the championship on 50 points. It will be 50 points that their total is. I believe Schlosser and Schmidt should still lead the championship just about over the Christies after this first race is factored into the title proceedings. But a great way to start the season. Fans in discussion after that one. This sidecar racing is quite entertaining, isn't it, she'll be saying. And he goes, yeah, it definitely is. Especially here at the Sachsenring, a brilliant facility. Has hosted the FIM Sidecar World Championship many times since it was reconfigured from the street circuit of yore and repurposed as a fully fledged circuit in the late 90s. It's one of those circuits that's from the late 90s, was constructed in the late 90s, but really does have the feel of a circuit from many decades prior. It's a similar trick that the Zandvoort layout kind of plays as well. Zandvoort, despite being only open in its current configuration since the 90s, you'd place the full layout somewhere in the 70s if you had to guess. And that's always a great sign that the old school circuits in some cases aren't even that old, but then again, lest we forget the 90s were now 25 years ago. What a great effort, though, from our race winners, Harrison Payne, Kevin Russo. Their second of the season. That Steinhausen Racing bike with them adorned to it. Did seem like a very strong combination last year. Not everything always went their way in 2023, but they're really establishing themselves as a 2024 championship contending outfit with that second win, proving that the pace at Le Mans was no fluke. They were on for a second win before the bike let go on the Sunday at Le Mans. So you have to imagine that it won't be out of the question that they'll be at the very sharp end of the pace charts again on Sunday in our longer race. What about Todd Ellis and Emmanuel Clement, though? They will not be happy with an 8th place finish. There's going to be some serious work done in the Ellis and Clement Racing awning this evening to try and get that bike back up to speed. It's not where we expect the red and green machine to be. The number 6, always so fast, traditionally speaking. We didn't see that from them today. I think as much as anything, it is learning that new tyre, that Hoosier rubber. It seems that Payne and Russo really have it sussed out. Of course, Hoosier tyres, while they're new to sidecar racing, have a rich history of stock car racing tyres, for example. Here in Europe, they produce the tyres for the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series, the Euro NASCAR Championship. And have been a part of the US stock car racing community for a long time in general. And well beyond stock cars as well. Certainly a manufacturer that can be relied on to deliver good rubber. But certainly the move from Avon for most of the sidecar racing fraternity is one that presents its challenges. It's a bit of a seismic shift. I think one of the biggest shifts we've seen in sidecar racing since the World Championship moved over to 600 cc's. Of course, the long bikes, these F1 sidecars, used to be 1000 cc's, but they've been 600 for several years now, going back almost a decade. I would say this move to a new tyre company for most of the outfits is Certainly one of the biggest moves we've seen in a long time. You see them there at the weighbridge. ADAC playing their part in this weekend, as they always do, here at the Sachsenring. Really fabulous facility, of course, that has welcomed DTM back in recent times on four wheels as well. So they have a kind of signature four-wheeled event to go along, of course, with the German Motorcycle Grand Prix, with the IDM Superbike and FIM World Sidecar Weekend. Great to see more happening here at the Sachsenring. Truly imposing circuit. I've walked it before thinking 2.2 miles, no problem, easy walk on a Friday evening after a trip to catering. It's anything but. Your legs feel it. And so many great spectator spots as well around this circuit. So many of the spectator banks are really elevated over the circuit, which means that pretty much anywhere you park yourself, you've got a view of a good 2 or 3 corners. You don't miss much. The only section that's really a little bit of a mystery to the spectators is the run from Waterfall to the final corner. There are big grandstands at the final turn. Maybe you miss the run down from Waterfall to the penultimate corner live in person, but other than that, it is a fabulous place to watch sidecar racing, motorcycles, cars, whatever you're here to watch. Sachsenring is a great place to do it. Like many facilities, it's a little bit kneecapped by noise restrictions, but it is a fabulous place to be nonetheless. Luscious green as well, which tells me that it's probably been raining over the last couple of months in Saxony, as it has across most of Europe. But we've got good weather this weekend. Of course, a full day of racing to come for the German fans. You will get to see lots of two-wheel competition over the next 2 days. The next FIM Sidecar World Championship race will be in the morning on Sunday, of course. And that will be in the early stages of the morning, around 11 o'clock local time for our German friends. The Superside, the FIM Sidecar World Championship, I think we are holding off to see a podium potentially, but wait for confirmation on that. I think that might be the plan. Always good, of course, to see the riders celebrating. Race 2 will be with you at 11:20 CET or CEST, since we're in the summer. So if you're in the UK, then it will be an hour earlier than that. A nice 10 AM start for everybody who wants to see race 2 of the FIM Sidecar World Championship. Everybody debriefing, discussing the race that was. I'm sure exchanging notes, like, have you figured out these new tyres yet? We're not sure. I think everybody's going to be looking to crib some notes from those top 4 riders, the top 4 outfits. Christie's, Payne and Rousseau, Schlosser and Schmidt, Stroyer and Kulsch all look a bit of a cut above at the moment. Great to see Cable and Richardson back as well. They were taking part in the sidecar shootout at the Goodwood members meeting a few weekends ago. We did also see Tim Reeves out in that. We don't have Tim Reeves this year, unfortunately, the 8-time world champion. I think they're looking to rally again in 2025. Maybe make a bid for another world title. I'm sure we haven't seen the last of the Team Birchall outfit either. But we have a very strong new class of the World Championship. And that's proven by the names on top, the Christies, Payne and Rousseau, with that close finish at the end of the race. Two teams that, of course, we saw competitive last year, but perhaps not two teams we'd have expected to be outpacing Todd Ellis and Emmanuel Clement quite so comprehensively this weekend, but that's what we're seeing. I do get the feeling, though, that Todd Ellis and Emmanuel Clement will come back strong on Sunday. I'm sure they'll find something to change the narrative of the race for Sunday. Here, the next grid of bikes heading out onto the circuit. That'll be the IDM Supersport 300s. Rather different sound to the screaming 600cc machines of the FIM Sidecar World Championship. And we are waiting with hope to catch the podium before we end today's broadcast, and of course it's always good to see the celebrations, gauge everyone's body language. And certainly I think that Payne and Rousseau will be very optimistic figures on that podium. They will come out of this first race, I think, second in the points, just behind the number 3 pairing of Schlosser and Schmidt. And I'm just being told that apparently all attempts to herd our riders and passengers towards the podium have failed. So unfortunately, for time constraints, we aren't going to be able to see the podium today, unfortunately. We'll do our best to get them to the podium quicker on Sunday, but you can understand it's difficult sometimes with riders and passengers. We'll see you again tomorrow, bright and early, for race number 2.